All right, so welcome back. Good morning, everybody. And for those of you on the East Coast, good afternoon, early afternoon for you. Last time I was speaking at one of these webinars, we talked about identification of advanced driver assistance systems. And one of the pieces that go along with ADAS is calibration. So today I want to talk a little bit about when is calibration required. We're not going to get into the in depth into what exactly calibration is or how to set up targets. We'll have a little bit on dynamic and static calibration, but for the most part, I want to focus really on when is calibration required. But before we get into that, I want to share a quick story. I know a few of you are probably out there are hunters. I'm not a huge hunter, but I've done some hunting, and I had the opportunity to go on a trip last fall. And before I did that, I did some research, and I picked out this new Leupold VX6 HD scope for my rifle. That was, top of the line as far as I'm concerned, anyways. A great product, and I got some video of me shooting this rifle here. So let me pull it up for you real quickly here. So here's my this beautiful trophy that I had an opportunity to get, and I missed pretty poorly there, but fortunately he stuck around for a little bit longer, and I had another opportunity to get a shot off. Oop. There we go. And second time was not as fortunate. But if you had a chance to check this part, if you saw this part of the video or not, but there's a rabbit here in the background. Check this out. Ooh, that thing goes flying pretty good. But anyways, so how does that relate to our calibration? I got here. Get my video stopping here. All right, so obviously that wasn't, I shouldn't say obviously, but that wasn't really me hunting, but that was just some video that I found online when looking for kind of a correlation for some of this that might be hunters. So obviously the gun still fired, correct? I could still see through the scope, and I still have my crosshairs on there, still able to aim, or what I thought I was doing was aiming. There was no indicator that the gun wasn't going to work properly, but I never sighted the scope in. So when we're talking about calibrations and we're talking about aiming of cameras and some of these sensors that are on these ADAS systems, we're kind of doing the same thing, right? So the camera's still going to see, the sensor can still sense, but we haven't calibrated or we haven't aimed it properly, and that's when we start getting into issues. And it may not always throw up indicator lamps. We may not always have a malfunction indicator lamp that's telling us, hey, there's something wrong with the systems. Some of these systems will have an indicator lamp if there's a calibration issue, but many other ones will not let us know that. We may not know if there's a sensor that's not aligned properly. We may not know if there is a camera that's misaligned. There may also be no diagnostic trouble code. So not only are malfunction indicator lamps not a clear indication, but neither are diagnostic trouble codes. So DTCs may not appear just because we simply didn't calibrate the camera or aim the system properly. So when we talk about cameras and sensors, where we're replacing parts and we aren't doing it, or if we are doing it properly, that's how the vehicle is really going to function properly. So a lot of these advanced driver assistance systems, we've got to absolutely make sure that we replace the parts properly, that our three-dimensional measurements are correct, that our wheel alignments are correct, and everything associated with it before we even get into our calibration and aiming. So this, kind of like the shooting video that we saw. Now the difference between life and death in that video was the deer died, the deer lived. However, the rabbit did not survive. But when we're talking about calibration aiming, when it comes to our customers' cars, the difference between life and death is us putting our customers in harm's way, and we certainly don't want to do that. We're going to share a couple of examples of how that could be an issue for us if we don't calibrate these systems properly in a little bit. It's not only a safety issue, but it's also a convenience issue. If we've got a system that's designed to be convenient, like a 360-degree camera, or perhaps a backing a backup assist camera or a backup proximity sensor. That's a convenience system that oftentimes our customers are relying on. If we don't calibrate them properly, we may be dealing with some issues from that standpoint, which certainly leads to a customer satisfaction issue that may end up in future collision. We may have, as I'll show you in a little bit, another customer satisfaction issue where the system isn't working as designed. Um, or again, certainly the safety issue is really paramount, and that's the one that we most want to be thinking about, that we're putting our customers back in the car properly. So when might calibration or camera alignment be required? So as I was putting this together, I was thinking about a few instances where calibration and aiming may be required. And I put together a small list. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. This does not include everything. However, this is the list that I came up with in researching this and kind of thinking about some of the areas that come on there. Now, certainly camera removal, sensor removal, those are going to almost always lead to a calibration or camera or alignment procedure being required. Same thing with glass removal if we're dealing with, forward-facing cameras in the mirror, bumper removal if we've got sensors located in there, if we've got sensors potentially behind there. Grill removal is another one. Certainly fender removal if I've got a park assist sensor that's in a fender. When I remove a fender, that's going to be a requirement for calibration. Doors, quarter panels, if I'm dropping the headliner, if I have to replace a roof, if I'm just simply disconnecting the battery, there may be some calibration requirements. I found some vehicle makers that require it for airbag deployments, if there's a change in tire size, or if I have a change in suspension height, if I've got a vehicle that may have been lifted or lowered, that may require some calibration. If there's been a wheel alignment, tail lamp removal. So any host of different requirements, including the last one I've got there, if the vehicle's been involved in a collision, and I'll share a little bit more about that as we go through as well. But simply, if the vehicle's been involved in a collision, some vehicle makers are going to require some calibration and alignment pieces on it. So, okay, the next video I want to show you is an actual vehicle that I was driving one day. This happens to be a 2020 Toyota RAV4. And it's not great video, it's cell phone video that I took as I was trying to go down the highway. I was safely going down the highway. You can see there's not a lot of traffic around me. This was back in February, and I'm gonna make sure I don't have audio here. I'm gonna turn the audio off on there. Let me walk through it. So what I've got in this Toyota RAV4 as I'm going down the road is I've got the lane keep assist activated, or not activated right now, and the vehicle's going down the road fairly good. Now, when I activate the lane keep assist or lane departure warning system on this particular vehicle, the vehicle starts kind of violently shaking from left to right, like the wind's really blowing me very heavily. So there, I've just turned on the lane keep assist, and you can see it's getting a lot more intense. The shaking is a lot more intense. For some reason, and every time the blue lines pop up, that's the camera seeing either the center line or the side of the road and trying to push me back and forth. So what was happening as I was driving down the road is I had this nonstop fighting. The camera was looking at the lane markings and kept trying to push me back and forth the entire way. Very, very violent. Like I said, they felt like there was a huge wind that was blowing on the road. Come to find out, it's just somewhere along the line, the camera had been misaligned, or there wasn't a calibration procedure performed. I don't know the specific details on this particular vehicle, but like I said, it was just very much, I had to fight just nonstop to keep the vehicle going down the road straight. And the minute that I turned off the lane keep assist, the vehicle went down the road properly. So now, fortunately, it was me driving the vehicle and not somebody else. So I knew kind of how the vehicle was reacting. I knew what was taking place. But if I give this vehicle back to a customer, an unsuspecting customer that had their collision repairs performed at my facility, number one, it's a safety issue, and number two, I've got a customer satisfaction issue where that customer is not going to be happy with the way that particular vehicle performed. So let me take you now to another scenario, another actual real life situation that happened. Now, this happened to be, this is an article that was published in Repair Driven News in April of 2018. So it's still on the Repair Driven News website if you want to go check out the entire article, but I want to give you a brief overview of the article and what happened. And I do have a bit.ly URL there if you want to copy that down to go directly to the article. But the article is based on some research that the IIHS did in talking about the risk of uncalibrated forward-facing cameras. Okay, so this happened to me on a 2016 Honda Civic. And so there's a couple of different things. Now, this is a multi-purpose camera. So not only is this camera responsible for the lane keep assist / lane departure warning system, it's also part of the collision braking, collision mitigation, automatic emergency braking, whatever terminology you want to use on its system as well. So the first image that I've got here is showing a camera that the camera was rotated 0.6 of 1 degree to the right. So it's looking at the right, it's looking forward towards the right lane departure, or the right lane markings much more than the left. And there's a difference in 27 inches between the center line of the vehicle and the right side of the vehicle, because again, that camera is aligned to the right. And so it's trying to push the vehicle back to the left. Even though the vehicle is going between the lines, it keeps trying to push it back there. So that's one, again, a driver inconvenience issue. And think about if it was going the other way, if I was aligned too far to the left, it's going to be pushing me to the right of the vehicle. But in this situation, because the camera thinks that we're going to the right too far, even though that we're still going down the center of the lane, the camera thinks we're going to the right. So it keeps trying to push us towards that center line, essentially into into oncoming traffic potentially. So now we've got a safety issue as well as a driver, a convenience issue, a customer satisfaction issue. I'm a potentially a tire wear issue if we drive this vehicle long enough and we're constantly trying to steer the vehicle and trying to straighten it out, we may get into some tire wear issues at some point as well. Additionally, and even more frightening on this particular vehicle, is the automatic emergency braking that took place on this vehicle. Okay, so in the top image where the camera was aligned the way it was supposed to be, the camera, the warning initiated at 124 feet, 3.4 seconds prior to being involved in a collision. The next one, with 0.4 of 1 degree misalignment to the left, the warning was about 4 feet shorter, so not a significant amount, but still 4 feet shorter than the previous warning. And it started braking at the same distance, 53 feet, before hitting the inflatable barrier in front of it. There was no impact in this particular scenario. Now, with the middle alignment, but with a misaligned bracket on some aftermarket glass, there was an aftermarket glass installed on one of these vehicles that had a camera bracket that happened to be misaligned. The warning did not take place until 110 feet before a collision, which is, we're 10 feet difference now. And the braking started to take place 7 feet later at 46 feet prior to being involved in a 5-mile-per-hour collision. Now, with that bracket misaligned 0.6 of 1 degree, the warning took place at 102 feet. The braking did not initiate till 32 feet, so 21 feet later than a properly aligned and properly calibrated camera. And we were involved in a 20-mile-per-hour collision in this particular vehicle. So a 0.6 of 1 degree, just think about how small of a fraction that really is. 0.6 of 1 degree misaligned to the right, we essentially caused a 20 mile per hour collision because we did not align that camera properly. So we have a huge safety issue on our hand when we're talking about misaligned cameras, misaligned sensors, improperly aligned cameras, improperly aligned sensors, with no malfunction indicator lamps on the dash, with no diagnostic trouble code. Everything looks great to that particular person driving that vehicle. However, we've put them in a vehicle that is unfit to drive. So this is, one of the many reasons why proper calibration, proper aiming is absolutely essential. So what exactly is calibration and aiming? What are we doing to that vehicle? So before we get into a little bit on what dynamic calibration and static calibration is, again, without diving deep into it, essentially what we're doing when we're calibrating is we've got that new camera, we've got that new sensor, and we're having a conversation with the control module of that vehicle, teaching that control module that this is X number of feet in front of us. And we're going to walk through a couple different scenarios of exactly how we're doing this. But essentially what I'm doing, that module has a program in it. It's designed to know hey, when I'm seeing this in front of, when I've got this rate of, when I'm sending out a signal and I'm getting that back at this many seconds, or this fraction of a second, I should say, that tells me as a module, it is X number of feet or meters or whatever that camera is designed to do. If I put a target too far out in front of the vehicle, or if I put a target too close to the vehicle, the module doesn't know that. All it's doing is recognizing that difference in time of how long it takes. So if I put that target too far in front of the vehicle, I'm sending that signal out and it's taking a long time to get back. It thinks, hey, I know how far away that is. Now I've been recalibrated. I've been reprogrammed to know what that distance is. However, if that vehicle ends up being shorter than what I've told that is from a feedback standpoint, now I've got an issue on my hand where I may be inducing that collision, or may not perform its function. Same thing if it's too close and I'm getting that ping back quickly, same issue that we're going to have there. Or in the case like that RAV4, what I believe was happening was that target may have been in the improper location. So when I was seeing those lines, it didn't know how far those were truly apart, and that's why I had that back and forth um, system on there. So that's kind of a little bit what we're doing, is we're really trying to teach that community. We're not really calibrating the camera or the sensor itself. What we're doing is having that camera sensor send that signal to the control module, and it's saying, oh, now I know how far away that target is, or how far away those lines are. So that's why it's critically important to make sure that we've got those aligned properly. And that's why 0.6 of 1 degree at 150 feet or 100 yards or 200 yards or whatever can make a huge difference. Just like in that case, again, back to our hunting scenario, if I'm trying to shoot that deer at 150 or 200 yards, if I'm off by just a fraction of a millimeter or just a fraction of a degree, I'm never going to hit my intended target. And same thing here with our collision repaired vehicles. So a little bit on what dynamic calibration is versus static calibration before we really start diving into exactly how to identify when calibration is required. So the first thing about dynamic calibration, it is not a test drive, okay? We're not just repairing the vehicle and taking it for a test drive and hoping that the system works. We need to understand what exactly that system is and how it reacts and how it's designed to react. Um, so if I've got an adaptive cruise control system, or if I've got a lane keep or lane departure warning system, I need to know exactly how that system is designed to function. In the case of our lane keep assist and lane departure warning, again, I need to know, is it just going to give me a warning that, hey, you're starting to veer towards the center line or starting to veer towards the shoulder of the road? Or is it a lane keep assist where it's actually going to physically steer me back into the center of the lane? So I need to understand what that system is as well. Unfortunately, these are not universal. It's going to vary from vehicle maker to vehicle maker and from model to model, even within a vehicle maker lineup. So I really need to understand what I am doing, what I'm looking for on the system. The times may vary. I may need to take the vehicle for a 10-minute test drive. I mean, you take it for a 3-minute test drive. I mean, take it for a 30-minute or dynamic calibration. I don't want to say test drive. Sorry about that. So I need to make sure I understand exactly what's going to be involved in this, so I can build my repair plan around it. If there's an area where I've got a lot of traffic, I need to take that in consideration. If I've got weather conditions, we got a little bit of snow yesterday here in northeast Wisconsin, and just a couple of hours north of me, there's 20 inches plus of snow. Well, obviously not a great time to do a dynamic calibration, even if I've got a road that is going to give me, the length that I need, and I've got traffic isn't going to be bad. If I've got rain or snow or fog, I need to be aware of those and make sure that I'm calibrating under the proper conditions. And that's going to be found in our OEM information again. And we want to make sure that we're documenting this, making sure that we get the procedure. We're probably also going to want to have 2 people in the vehicle. So I'm going to have, just like in our photo we're looking at here, I've got one person driving the vehicle. I've got another person monitoring the dynamic calibration on the scan tool and make sure that our program is right. So these are things they need to account for. And these are also things that are not included when I'm replacing a sensor or a module. These calibrations, whether they're static or dynamic, are not going to be included in those operations. So I need to go through those OEM procedures and see what's exactly involved in our static calibration, what's exactly involved in our dynamic calibration, and make sure that I'm accounting for that properly. Now, when it comes to static calibration, here's where I'm using targets. So a dynamic calibration is going to be done on the road, driving the vehicle. A static calibration is going to be done inside under specific parameters. I'm going to have my targets. They're going to have to be, as we just talked about, in those precise locations. We've got some other course that we're working on exactly why precision is important. I know we kind of talked about it with the IHS test, and we looked at the analogy of the analogy for the scopes and for the rifle hunting. But we need to really make sure that we're putting those targets in the right location each and every time. We're going to need a scan tool for almost all of these. When we're doing a static calibration, we're going to need a scan tool, although there are some programming on some former Honda vehicles on their lane watch system that doesn't require a scan tool. But for the most part, we're going to need a scan tool for this. We're going to need targets. We may also need some additional special tools for this. So how do I know when calibration is required? Well, certainly the OEM information is the best place to find that information. So as I'm building my repair plan, if I recognize that I'm going to be replacing some of those parts that we talked about, a bumper, a grill, a sensor, a camera, a mirror, the glass, whatever, I want to go into those procedures and look for that calibration requirement information. There's also iCar's Repairability Technical Support website, which we'll walk through as well. They have a pretty comprehensive OEM calibration requirements search for a lot of vehicles. And I will walk you through that after we get through some of these OEM pieces. But so, as I mentioned, one of the last steps you're going to see in a lot of these different installation procedures, this one happens to be for a Ford F-150 adaptive cruise control sensor and module. Step 10 says align the cruise control module, refer to cruise control radar alignment. So that's going to be the last step in a lot of these. And so let's walk through an actual calibration, a replacement procedure for a particular vehicle. So I'm going to use an F-150 for this example. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share another screen here. So I'm going to select my 2015 F-150. Are we all seeing that? Chris, can you give me a quick check on that, or somebody? You're seeing the all data page? Okay, cool. Yeah. All right, so I'm in all data for this one today. Obviously I've used the Ford website a lot for the Motorcraft, the website for a lot of these, but I'm going to use all data today just because I happen to have it up and I have a current subscription where I don't have a current subscription to Ford right at this moment. So in the Ford system, I'm going to select the accessories and optional equipment, and I'm going to scroll down to parking assist sensor for this first example. If I move my thing out of here, so parking assist sensor, I just saw it, there we go. And I'm going to select the removal and replacement procedure. And this particular vehicle has the active park assist located on the fender. So on the fender, the lower part of the fender, the F-150 is equipped with the active park assist is where I'll find that. I will select that. And so here's my information. Okay, I'm going to remove the screws in the fender, remove the splash shield, and then I'll be able to access the sensor. There's our sensor location right there. And you'll see installation to install. It says reverse the removal procedure and align the active park assist service. Refer to the azimuth system check. So I'm going to select on this azimuth system check. And here's where it's going to give me my information on what exactly I need to do in order to align that. So we can see here I've got, we're looking at that mirror all morning. You ever gonna let it go? Okay, so whoever just called in there, if we could put our phone on mute, that'd be awesome for me. I'd appreciate that. Okay, so we can see here we've got, for looking at our front fender here, we've got some P1, P2, and P3 dimensions on here, locations on it. So how do I find those? So we're going to set the parking brake. We're going to put the transmission in drive. Then we're going to place our test objects where they're specified. So how do I find out where they're specified? I'm going to have to go to the specifications page. So here's my specifications page. Oh, I'm sorry. Where did my specifications go here? Lost my piece here. There we go.
Having 5 minutes.
What's wrong again? I had this all mapped out, and I got too many windows open here for my chat and everything else. Sorry about that. Let me close that chat for now. That'll help a little bit. Okay. So here's our back to our azimuth test here again, and I'm going to go to, there it is, mechanical. So I'm going to go to specifications here under mechanical, and it's going to give me this parking aid, vehicles with park assist, and it's going to be my P1 distance of 50 centimeters and my P2 and P3 of 391 centimeters. So I'm going to write those specifications down. I'm going to come back to my chart here now, and I'm going to look here, and from the park assist, my P1, I'm going to measure out then again for my P2 and P3 distance. I'm going to measure for my P1 and then 75 centimeters away from each of those to kind of triangulate my sensor on that. And what these are here are just simply, if I look at now this is the rear park assist. These objects can be fabricated using 9 centimeter inside diameter, 100 centimeter in length PVC pipe. So now I've got to go and build PVC piping on this particular vehicle. So I need 3 of these for my side test, and I need 5 of them for my rear park assist. So these are things I'm gonna have to go acquire. I'm gonna have to purchase these. I'm gonna have to build these, and then I'm gonna have to go through and do the math on placing each one of these. So again, these are not included operations in our typical sensor replacement. So these things I need to account for to make sure that I go ahead and do that properly. I want to stay with the F-150 here for just a little bit more. And I'm going to go back to my vehicle here. And this time what I want to do is I'll walk you through the 360 degree camera alignment process. So again, I'm going to go back into accessories and optional equipment. I'm going to go down to camera. And I'm going to look at the forward looking camera. So again, I'm going to go into the forward facing camera, or not the forward facing camera. This is the camera that's located on the grille. There's also 2 cameras located on the mirrors as well as the tailgate on this vehicle. And I'm going to go into my removal and replacement procedure. And the first thing to do is remove the radiator. So this to replace the camera that's in the front grille area here. So I need to remove the radiator grill. So another comprehensive procedure. I've got to lift the hood up. I've got to remove some deflectors. I've got to remove some wiring. I've got to remove some trim pieces. I've got to remove some more trim pieces. I've got to remove the headlamp assembly trim piece. I've got to remove some more push pins. Then I can finally remove the grill, and I can finally access that grill camera that's in there. I'm gonna go ahead and replace my camera. And then again, the last step that we're going to see on here, it says align the cameras, refer to the 360 degree camera alignment. So now I need to go into that procedure. Again, none of this is included in the procedure itself. Now this is a rather comprehensive procedure here that involves these 360 degree camera alignment apps, these camera calibration mats. Now, before I do that, there's a couple things I want to point out that we need to do on here. The first thing I need to do is the first thing I have to do is retrieve diagnostic trouble codes. So before I even do this procedure, I need to go retrieve any diagnostic trouble codes that might exist. I need to go around the entire vehicle. I need to inspect all 4 of those cameras and the associated mounting hardware to make sure that they're undamaged. So although we replaced the damaged camera in the front of this particular truck, I still need to make sure that all my cameras on the side view mirrors as well as the tailgate are clean, and make sure that there's no debris on them. Make sure that the adjacent parts are located properly. Make sure that our mounting hardware is properly. And then the next thing you do is place the vehicle in a flat, open area, preferably indoors, with the front wheels pointed straight ahead, steering wheel centered, and a minimum of 6 feet of open space on each side, 7 feet of open space in front of me, and 11 feet behind the vehicle. So now I've got to make sure I've got all the space available around that. Now again, whether I'm doing this or whether I'm subletting this or whether I'm bringing somebody to do this, I need to know all this information as I'm building that repair plan so I can account for this. I can make sure that I've got everything built in my repair plan. I can make sure that I've got, scheduled maintenance. If I'm going to sublet this to the dealership or mobile diagnostic service, I need to make sure that I can align everything for there from a timing standpoint. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to start again making sure that all my lenses are clean. And now I'm gonna have to obtain the mat spacing for this measurement, position A on this one. So now again, I've got another measurement that I need to go in the specifications. Now measurement A, I'm gonna record these again. Measurement A happens to be the distance between the inside edges of the alignment match, which is 89 inches. And then I've got a measurement X here that I haven't encountered yet, but I wanna write that down as well, and that's 94.5 inches. So now as I go through my procedure again, now I've got to do some math. No one told me math would be involved, right? Not an area of strength for a lot of us out there. So again, if we have an alignment, if we have a technician that does a lot of this, we want to make sure we have somebody that's got some strong math skills on here. So I need to calculate the mat spacing from the tire. So I'm going to measure my distance A between those two. I'm going to subtract the distance between the outside of the tires, divide by 2, and that's going to give me my C distance. So now I know how far apart from the tire to the mat my measurements are going to be. The next thing I need to do is I need to go and I need to get my spacing of the mat. So I'm going to mark, use chalk on it, and I'm going to draw a line parallel to the vehicle. I'm going to locate the center of each front axle. And again, I'm going to use a chalk now to run it perpendicular to that wheel until it intersects with my C position. And now I know where to put my spacing mats on here. There are marks on the front of the alignment mats. So we've got a forward-facing arrow, as you can see here, on the alignment mat, so I know which direction that the mats are going to face. And then on each side, I'm going to see there's a line on each one of these alignment mats that I'm going to line up those crosshairs with again. And then I'm going to hook up my scan tool. I'm going to go through this entire process to make sure that my 360-degree cameras are aligned. Now, the 360-degree cameras aren't necessarily a safety issue, but it's a huge customer satisfaction issue. Because if I rely on those 360-degree cameras when I'm pulling into my garage, or if I'm backing into a parking spot, or pulling into a parking spot, when I hit that 360-degree camera on my dash, if I don't align these properly, I'm either going to have a gap in my coverage or I'm going to have an overlap in my coverage. Either one of these aren't going to be desirable. So again, this is why it's critical to make sure that we're aligning the 360-degree cameras in this particular scenario. Again, not a safety issue, but definitely something that we want to consider from a customer satisfaction issue. All right. So with that, does anybody have any questions on?
Hey, Jason, Gene Lopez here.
Yeah, Gene.
So you went through the disassembly to find that front-facing camera in the grill. So if you had repairs completed, would you reassemble and check for, proper alignment and then disassemble again for calibration, or do you just go straight to calibration without having to put everything back together?
Well, that's a great question, Gene. That's going to depend. So in the case of this one, the grill, kind of being something that maybe we can put a little bit later on the process. I'd probably have everything back assembled again before we go through and do this one. However, I may have to take it off if I do something incorrectly, or if I've got perhaps three-dimensional measurements that are off on it. Other procedures, I'll use Honda with their blind spot systems. A lot of the Honda systems, and Honda Odyssey is one, and I believe there's I don't know, there's a video. iCar's got a training class or a video. I think it's a training class on it. The Honda Odyssey, for example, is one that I know the blind spot system, the sensor for that is located behind the bumper cover on it. So I want to do that calibration procedure before I put that bumper cover back on there. Because if I assemble everything, put that bumper cover on there, and then try to do my calibration, if I need to make any adjustments on it, there are some adjustments available on that one. I'm going to need to take that bumper cover back off. So it's really going to depend, I think, on the scenario. But again, if you read through the OEM information and kind of document that whole repair plan, I think that's going to be your best option for identifying when exactly you're going to have to do that. Now, if I come back to that azimuth test on that fender or the rear park sensors, obviously I need those parts back on the system as well. So that may be something I do a little bit later in the process. Well, but so it's gonna really vary depending on the particular operation that we're working on.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you address the cruise control radar alignment, or did I miss that?
So the cruise control radar alignment, that was just, I did not talk about that one for again, knowing what I know about this particular vehicle. When it says align the cruise control module, this particular one is a static calibration that's done in the shop. The vehicle has to be running for up to 10 minutes. So I need to make sure I'm thinking about my air ventilation on that one. I'm gonna hook my scan tool up on this one, and the spec, there's no target for this one. What you need to do on this one is actually use a level. So you use a level to make sure that it's aligned, vertically, and then there's going to be some adjustments depending on. So there's 3 screws that we're looking on there. Depending on what the system is telling me what to do, I may have to make some adjustments horizontally on that as well. But that one, I didn't really get into that one, but that is how that procedure is done. And again, I need to make sure that I'm doing that with access to it. So I need to make sure that trim panel is removed from this particular, or the bumper is removed from this before I go and align the adaptive cruise control module on this particular vehicle. Not all vehicles, but on this particular vehicle.
Now the note on number 9 says it's only necessary when you just went off that slide, but it said it's only necessary when you're replacing a new component. So if you're replacing all the components around it, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, you have to dig into them.
Correct. Yeah. So if I'm just replacing the bumper on this particular one, and we can look it up on the next step if you wanted to on the RTS website. But if I'm only replacing the bumper on this particular truck, I don't have to align it. But I believe if I R&I it, I still need to do it. But I'll have to verify that as well. So that's that number 9, maybe just referring to the using a diagnostic scan tool to complete the PMI process. So again, I don't know what step 8 and step 7 has. We can definitely go look at that if we want to after we're done with this. But and then we can again look at those parameters when calibration is required on this particular vehicle. We'll do that momentarily when we go through the iCar RTS page.
One important thing to add here, Jason, is to play off of Gene's question a little bit, is that logistics is critical in the estimating process. Even if you're a person that maybe outsources calibration to dealers, you have to know when to send it. And at what portion or what part of your repair before assembly is it going to go to the dealer, et cetera. So those estimators play a huge role.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think about, again, this particular truck we're looking at right here. How many people back out of their garage and maybe rip a mirror off. What in the past was just a couple of bolts and maybe a wire is now a very complex, detailed procedure. So again, that mirror that I ripped off, I now have to again account for that, plan for those calibrations, have access to that 360-degree calibration mat, which let's be honest, most of us aren't going to go out and acquire. So this is something I'm probably gonna have to send to the dealership. So again, what used to be fairly simple procedures now are a much more complex, much more detailed process.
A comment on here from James at Woodhouse. So he does a lot of these Fords. We'll give him that. They may be the largest Ford truck dealer in the country still. I'm not sure. But he said just if it has trailer assist, then those measurements for the mats are going to change as well. So you got to be responsible for that.
Yeah, another great point.
And then you got a question here. If a camera or blind spot or a sonar sensor is disconnected and reconnected, will it always require calibration?
I'd hate to say always. So again, that's where you need to refer that vehicle maker information. So as I'm going through that procedure and I'm disconnecting it, it's going to tell me at the end whether or not I need to go through and perform that. Some absolutely will, others may not. So again, it's going to depend on the vehicle make, model, year, all that. And the one thing, back to the Ford, just real briefly, that calibration mat is used for multiple vehicles, but obviously it's not going to be an F-150 versus a Fusion that's got the same procedure. Those mats aren't going to be in the same location. So once I write that remember those A and those X measurements on there, or the P1, P2, P3, and then P4, P5, P6, that's going to vary depending on the vehicle, the wheelbases, all that. So again, I can't just write that number down and apply it to every vehicle, and not even every F-150. If I've got a standard cab versus a crew cab versus a super crew, that's going to change as well. So it's paramount that I'm looking up that procedure itself to find out exactly where those mats are going to go each and every time.
Right. I will say, while it's not a guarantee that it's a pretty high percentage when those items are disconnected that calibration is required.
Yep.
So we're trying to read through here real quick. James did confirm they are still the largest Ford truck dealer in the country. It's Nebraska. You'd expect it, though, right?
Right.
And he'd like the link to that IHS article that you had, Jason.
Okay.
Um,
I'll go back to that real briefly since we're not too far from it here. There it is. If you want to go ahead and copy that down. Okay.
James,
good.
if you'll just pop that title into Google, it's the first thing that pops up for you.
Perfect.
From Repair Driven News.
Any other questions on the OEM stuff before we head into the iCar repairability technical support website? We're good for now? All right, so let me pull back up my browser here. Maybe. Okay. Are we seeing the RTS website? We have RTS?
Yeah. Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jason.
No, you're good. I said I just got too many windows and too many things going on here, so it's kind of hard for me to see what I got here. Okay, so this is the iCar's repairability technical support website, rts.icar.com, i-car.com. And one thing about RTS, one thing iCar has done for the month of April and May as well, everything on the RTS website is open to everybody. Usually things like their calibration search, then I'm going to show you the partial part replacement. Some of the OEM information that's on here are behind a password protected area that's available to all Gold Class businesses, all iCar Platinum individuals, people that have been training with iCar. But for the months of April and May, everything on RTS is open to everybody in the industry, including what I'm about to walk you through right now, which is the OEM calibration requirements search. Now, this is a fantastic tool. iCar has been doing some updates to it, so there may be a few gaps in coverage right now. But so I'm going to pull up that Honda Civic that we talked about earlier because it was part of that IHS. I want to kind of tie it back together a little bit on here. So I'm going to do is I'm going to go do a search for Honda and my Civic. You have the 2016 model.
That screen isn't showing up, Jason. You've got the Honda Civic screen showing up.
Okay, thanks, Gino. Let me. There we go. It's because I'm sharing the wrong screen. That should be better.
There it is.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to select Honda again now. And Civic 2016. All right, so here is the OEM calibration search requirements page for a 2016 Civic. So I want to share you a few things I love about this particular tool that iCar's put together. So what this is they show you which options are available on a particular model. Okay, so it's not VIN specific, so it's not necessarily going to be the vehicle in front of you, but rather which options are available on a vehicle. So the 2016 Civic was available with adaptive cruise control, collision warning, collision braking, side view camera, lane departure warning, lane keep assist 2, and rear view cameras. Okay, so what it's got is the kind of the industry term for it. So in this case, adaptive cruise control and collision warning. It's got the Honda term for it. Honda calls it adaptive cruise control, but the collision warning they call forward collision warning, collision braking. It will then tell you which cameras and or sensors kind of power that particular system. So in the adaptive cruise control area, it's the camera near the rear view mirror and some sensors behind the front bumper cover or grille. Same thing with collision warning, camera near rear view mirror, sensors behind the front bumper or grille. The next thing it does, it will let you know whether or not a diagnostic trouble code will set or a malfunction indicator lamp will illuminate if there's an issue with that particular system, okay? So I mentioned earlier that not all these systems set a malfunction indicator lamp. Not all systems will trip a diagnostic trouble code. However, on the adaptive cruise control system on a 2016 Civic, a MIL will illuminate and a DTC will set if there's an issue with it, okay? The next thing I wanted to show you is if I click on either one of these areas, I'm going to click on the rear view mirror system, the camera near the, it's called the multi-purpose camera unit. So now when I'm in the OEM information, if I do a search for forward-facing camera, I may not find what I'm looking for. But in this particular case, I'm looking for the multi-purpose camera. So if I'm in the Honda system and I do a search for multi-purpose camera, it's going to bring me up everything tied to that camera and that system. Everything from removal and installation, diagnostic trouble codes, align, you know, the calibration procedure, everything that's required. And the next thing the RTS system is going to tell me is when calibration is required. So if the windshield is removed, installed, or replaced, I have to align that camera. If the multi-purpose camera unit is removed, installed, or replaced, I have to align that camera. If structural repairs are made, I have to align that camera. So remember earlier when I said if the vehicle's been involved in a collision, I'm getting that from a presentation that Scott Caboose from Honda, American Honda Motor Company, put on some time ago. So this is a presentation that's available. This was published in Repair Driven News. That IIHS article that we referenced earlier, there's a link to this presentation in there. So this is a presentation that Scott gave on the Honda ADAS system. And again, if I get down to page 15 on here, it says the millimeter wave radar aiming is required after a collision damage to the front end or after structural damage anywhere on the vehicle. Anywhere on the vehicle. So if I've got a structural damaged Honda Civic, I have to perform this camera alignment, okay? Again, not included operation with simply removing and installing the camera, removing and installing that mirror, removing and installing that windshield. This is an additional step that I have to go through for this particular procedure. If the SRS has deployed, or after a wheel alignment, or if there's a DTC that indicates that calibration required. So those are all of the conditions that Honda requires calibration of that rear view of that camera system under any of those conditions. So essentially, if I've got a Honda Civic with a deployed airbag or structural damage on it, I have to go through this procedure. Now, as we see more and more vehicle makers, including automatic emergency braking, as it's going to be standard on 2022 models, as we start to see more and more of those vehicles on the road, just be aware that we're going to have to go through this a lot more frequently. I need a plan, as Krista mentioned earlier, part of my repair plan. I really need to make sure I identify this, whether I'm doing it in-house, whether I'm doing it at a dealership, whether I've got a remote diagnostic system, or a traveling diagnostic team coming in. I need to make sure that I'm planning for all this stuff accordingly, okay? A couple more things that I want to highlight on this RTS tool. Now this next DTC set area, so before it was if there's an issue with the system, this next DTC indicator is if I do it incorrectly, or if I don't do it on this particular vehicle, it will set a diagnostic trouble code. It's also going to let me know that I do have to have a scan tool for this procedure, and special tools are required. In this particular case, I'm going to need some targets set up at that proper location, proper height, proper width, proper distance in front of it. So it doesn't tell me what exactly those tools are that I need, but it's going to let me know that there are special tools that are associated with it. So that's what it looks like in the RTS tool. So a fantastic tool. So as I'm building as I'm putting together my repair plan, I can go to the iCar RTS website, look and see what's going to be required if I'm doing any of these procedures. So the question earlier about if I just remove a bumper, am I have to do it? It will tell you here yes or no. Again, I'm still going to need to access that OEM information for the specific procedure and how to access it. But this gives us one way to identify when calibration is going to be required. So let me go back now to my presentation, and we will see if there are. See, we've got a couple more questions that are coming in here. Okay. Okay, so are we good on any other questions before we move on to our next step as far as the RTS tool, if we've got any questions on the RTS search tool and how it functions? As I mentioned, I know that they've got some stuff that's down right now. They found a couple of issues that they had, so they needed to do some updating on it. So I know Danielle and Kylie and Susan and team are going back and doing some updates on that. So certainly keep your eye on that moving forward.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah, Gino.
Gene Lopez here. So I've used the RTS OEM calibration search.
Yeah.
And sometimes that vehicle isn't there, but if you go and you ask iCar at their ITS website, they'll respond to you really, really fast. And so if you don't, like, for example, I think it was a Subaru that I couldn't find or they didn't have posted. But when I asked about that vehicle, they gave me similar information that you'd see on the website. So don't be afraid to ask iCar. It's a real good tool.
That's a great point, Gino. Appreciate that. Yeah. So again, that's another feature that's open again through April and May is the Ask iCar feature. Or if you're a Picatech subscriber through Collision Hub, we can also get you that answer as well. But the Ask iCar feature, if you're a subscriber, or again through April and May, that's also available. You can submit a request, or you can do a search to see if other people have asked questions. So Gene's question, for example, although maybe the Subaru one's not on the website yet, if you did a search in the Ask iCar for Subaru iSite, Gene's specific question might be on there, and the answer that more likely Susan or Kylie provided Gene would be on there as well. But yeah, so definitely check that out. Or again, if you're a Picatech subscriber and you've got the same question, we'd be happy to try to answer that for you. And then one other thing I wanted to mention on the Honda, I failed to mention this before moving forward. So another thing that I found while I was in the Honda Service Express website with regard to that forward-facing camera, it says if the vehicle you were aiming was involved in a collision, or if you suspect the alignment is out of specifications, you must perform a wheel alignment prior to aiming the multi-purpose camera unit. So again, I know wheel alignments are historically an area of some debate. So in this particular situation on this Honda vehicle, Honda's spelling it right out there. So again, if I've got that structural damage or glass replacement that's going to require that camera to be aligned, I need to perform a wheel alignment first before I go ahead and do that. So again, making sure that I'm building that into my repair plan moving forward with it. So hang on one second here. I'm going to stop sharing momentarily. And with that, oh, where am I? And with that, do we have any questions on any of the stuff that we just covered? Now we're kind of getting up against here for time. I had a couple more things on some aftermarket parts that I was going to cover, but I know that we don't have a ton of time on here. So just be aware that there are some aftermarket parts issues that are out there when it comes to the actual calibration aiming, and perhaps we can cover that in a later webinar, or definitely in the Collision Hub scanning and calibration course that we're currently working on. We'll cover that as well. So with that, I'll open up the questions. If anybody wants to use the chat feature or take yourself off of mute, we can do that as well.
So we got a question in there, Jason, that says if alignment's out, but it's not related to the accident, how should you proceed?
Well, on that one, again, if we have to align it before we do the calibration, or we're not going to be able to do it properly, and we've already seen what can go wrong with that. So we want to make sure that we're going and doing that alignment. Now, how you go about that from a payment standpoint, that's something that you're going to have to certainly have to deal with, but it's got to be done before we do it. So the one thing that you'll definitely learn as you get into is We're going to go down a lot of rabbit holes on this. Again, I just went through a couple of forward procedures there, and you saw how many links that we had on there. If I look at that grill camera thing, if we start getting into that whole, you have to remove the grill panel. There's a number of other links I'm going to have to go into, so we can get pretty complex pretty quickly. And if we're talking about our left front hip where we've got, you know, grills and fenders and headlamps and hoods and everything, I'm going to have a stack of documentation pretty quickly on it. But I guess kind of go back to the question. Honda's telling me I have to do a wheel alignment on there before I go and align that system. Or, again, we already saw we're putting our customer in harm's way if we don't do that wheel alignment before we go ahead and calibrate that system.
Yep. Just make sure that on your line notes, when you add alignment in there, that you say, you know, alignment added for procedure, blah, 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 you know, and then you reference that procedure, that you're not just throwing an alignment on the estimate. Always give them an explanation for what you got there. The next question is for windshield cameras, how do we force the insurer to pay for OEM glass? I'll take this one, Jason.
That's where Kristen gets in jumping on.
That's my expertise. I can't force an insurer to pay for it or do anything. They have a contract. If it's first party, and that contract may have some limitations in it. If it's third party, it's a completely different story. So you always want to know what you're dealing with there. Secondarily, if there's a specific statement from the OE because of glass, that's a safety issue, which we have articles and documentation that shows why we have to do this. You and your customer can present that to the bill payer. Ultimately, it's the customer's job to coordinate the bill payer to compensate them completely for the repair procedures that you do. So don't over insert yourself into that process a lot of times. Traditionally, when those are presented side by side, that's when we haven't had a lot of problems with. I'm surprised that I have problems getting insurers to cover just pre-scan, post-scan, but OE windshields with documentation seems to be a pretty easygoing one. So just make sure all your ducks are in order and that it's been explained to the customer. And then again, don't over insert yourself in that relationship or get between that relationship between the customer and the bill payer too much, and it works out really well. Jason, do you see that Land Rover question?
Yeah. So I haven't had a chance to digest because I went back. So since the aftermarket part thing did come up, I did want to go back and cover it real briefly. So not just glass, same thing with bumper covers. Again, these systems are pretty detailed. They're pretty they're quite specific. So if I've got the wrong material, if I've got the wrong thickness, if I've got glass that maybe has the wrong transparency, those are all can present issues for us. So here's an actual case. This is an Audi Q5 that was at Aztec. So I got this from Jake Rodenroth at Aztec. So this is an actual scenario that happened on an Audi Q5. They had the vehicle there. They had everything exactly where it's supposed to be. They're using OEM software, OEM equipment, OEM targets, OEM everything except glass. So for several hours, they kept trying to align this particular system. And every time they kept getting this fail notification saying that there's an issue with the distance essentially it was saying that the target was set up in the wrong location. Jake walked up to it and noticed that it said that it's got aftermarket glass on it instead of Audi glass on it. So it had aftermarket glass installed on it. And again, don't know if it was too thick, too thin, wrong transparency, whatever the scenario was. He said, guys, send that back, get OEM glass installed in it, and let's try it again. They went and put the Audi glass in it. The system worked as designed, passed the calibration with success. So aftermarket glass, aftermarket bumper covers can absolutely make an issue, make on it. If you look at, the GM has a document, for example, that says no bumper cover repairs on any of their vehicles that are equipped with some of these systems. They also allow only 13 mils of paint on that system. So we're talking 13 mils. We're talking a pretty small amount of material on here. So again, imagine if I've got a bumper cover that's maybe too thick that was an aftermarket bumper cover. Again, I can really run into some challenges on this. So again, follow those OEM procedures because we are putting our customers in harm's way. It can be the potential between life and death. So, okay. So we got Land Rover Discovery Sport and we'll pay for the calibration. There's nothing in writing.
Yeah, my question, I'm going to drive in a question. If PCC, if you're still on here and can give us a little bit more detail, OEM One Stop gets me to an OEM page. So you paid to access Land Rover's OEM procedures, and there's nothing in there about, there was nothing in, no procedure in there about the module once you actually accessed Land Rover's website.
See, I don't know. I think they just went to the OEM One Stop, which OEM One Stop and iCar and Collision Hub for that with our Pick Attack feature, we can't send you the procedures. OEM One Stop, unless the OEM asks them to publish it, unless the OEM asks iCar to publish it, the procedures themselves aren't readily available there. So OEM One Stop is just going to point you in the right direction and get you to the OEM, to the Land Rover web page, which you're still gonna have to need to go and access that. Now, when it comes to the iCar RTS pages, if you just went to RTS and did the calibration requirements search, that may not yield what you're looking for, because again, we're talking a little bit of, you know, a smaller volume vehicle. So that may be one that maybe they haven't gotten to yet, or maybe that's one of the updates they haven't looked at yet. But use that Ask iCar feature and they can point you in the right direction on that as well, because they will have access to Land Rover's website as well through their relationship with Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to put myself in a position of defending an insurance company, but I was one for so long. So they indemnify loss, and indemnification of loss must be proven. So for us, as not really us as the repairer, but the consumer has to kind of prove that loss. So if I do something to the car, there needs to be documentation as to why I'm doing it and charging for it. So my advice on how to proceed would be to pay whatever the access is. If you haven't already, access the OEM page and do the research. Use iCar RTS, use another source to help guide that research if you need to. But it's not unfair for an insurer to say, show me why this is required. It can't just be an R&I and a plug-in. That's not an unfair request from the adjuster or the insurance company.
What else we got for questions out there?
Looks good. Yeah. Fantastic job, Jason.
All right. Well, with that then, Kristen, that's it for today, right? We're no webinars this
today.
afternoon?
You were a one-man show today. So tomorrow we've got Mickey in the morning at 11 a.m. We'll be talking about marketing. If you are an OE certified collision center, some marketing tips and tricks you can do right now to possibly, capture a little bit more business. Mickey will be on, and then the afternoon at 3 o'clock, Dan Am, the SADA guys will be back to talk about understanding air filtration in your shop and clean air and when to change your filters and how to monitor that. So that'll be another good one in the afternoon.
Yeah, Case, and we'll get working on that rapid this afternoon.
I would pay. I think I would pay to watch like you and Jake do a rap. That'd be awesome.
It's going to be expletive though. It's going to be NC-17 probably, just so you're aware.
Well, our audience is used to Larry, Jason, so I think they can handle it.
That's right. It'll be tame, right?
Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Appreciate it. And we're looking forward to having you back tomorrow. Thanks. Have a good day.
Awesome.